Then there was a just massive war, and then like 5 gods died. And just as an example of just, and that's significant in our game because religions are a big part of the game. Religions will be in this game too. Like kind of Greek mythology style religions when I say that. So it's a big deal when stuff like that happens because people get abilities from their religion. They have there's actual temples where you can go and store items and stuff like that. So when a deity dies, it's pretty earth shaking or game shaking. So there's been cities that have come to be because of players. There have been entire features of the game that have come to being because players did certain things, and then we saw it was interesting to people, and we would build up some huge feature behind it. That kind of stuff we're still going to do, and that's a very MUD-like thing. The fact that you build in direct reaction to some of the things that your players do in your world, that we're totally keeping in Stash. And so that's going to give Stash, in some ways, that MUD feel where it's like, hey, we did this crazy thing and we started this little fishing league just by dorking around with this object. And the next thing you know, there's a whole system and a whole codified process for submitting fish and doing all this kind of things, like just as one example, you know what I mean? So that's something that we're definitely going to keep. Like I said before about the world events, that's something we're going to keep that feels very MUD-like. But yeah, in Threshold, for example, you can, because it's all text, literally create whatever you want. You can write your own description. You can be crazy. When you build houses in Threshold, you can just have a lava moat around your house and stuff like that and all kinds of crazy stuff that is a little harder in a graphical game because if you don't have the assets, you can't do it. But anyway, I tend to ramble, so feel free to follow up on that if I didn't hit something that you were really asking.
You can't see any nodding over here, but every other thought I had was right, smiled, nodding. I'm actually looking at a post that Frog Dice, the account Frog Dice, had made on Steam, which lists through many things you've already said, such as your BOO, your base of operations. I absolutely love the acronym.
Good.
It's turn-based, grid-based, tactical combat, going into the PvP again, that you can participate in multiple PvP battles at once with the snapshot system you were referring to. It also lists epic boss battles, world events, the primary classes that the game should start with, not necessarily meaning that is all that will happen, because I'm sure you want to update.
Absolutely.
With the 5 races, again, starting with, hopefully bringing on more. Collecting pets, and this is something I hoped you would touch more on, was conquering and ruling outposts. The message itself states you can control what NPCs and services are available there.
Okay, yeah, so in the city, and there's 3 major capital cities in the game world. Those are like the super hubs. If I'm not mistaken, when we launch, we're only going to have one open, Askagard, just because we want to keep our population concentrated so they can interact. And in this game, overcrowding is not really going to be an issue because once you go into most of the dungeons, some of the dungeons are like the handcrafted dungeons. You can go in, you could run into other players in the dungeon, but the random dungeons, the procedural dungeons, are instanced for you. So overcrowding is never really an issue. So it's good to keep people somewhat concentrated. So, but once you leave the capital city, every time you go into a zone, like a sub-region that's usually geared towards a certain level range, that zone will have an outpost of some kind of little village or something like that, or it could just be a fort or something like that. And in that fort, there are NPCs that can buy your junk, that can, repair weapons, potentially like the blacksmith, that can sell you food, that can provide healer services and stuff like that. So, a variety of kind of your standards, sending mail, a faster way to travel, like a horse travel or something like that. Tons of different little services, kind of like the standard stuff that you see. Now, if a player takes over that outpost, if it's a fort, it might be taken over through, like, you literally just kill all the people at the fort and take it over. If it's more of a village, there may have to be, like, an election, and then players that are playing in that region could vote, and you could try to take control. By one of those methods, you take control of that outpost, and then you rule it. until either first of all, if it's the conquest type, which is probably going to be the most common starting off, now you have to decide how many guards there are, and that has a certain cost that is related to the junk that gets sold in the region. Like, let me back up a second. You have 10 bag slots. The 10th one is what's called a junk trunk. And you know all the junk loot you get when you're playing MMOs, just the random junk trash, the vendor trash?
Yep.
That all goes into your junk trunk. And whenever you go back to cities or towns, you can unload your junk trunk. Well, in a way, that's almost like fuel for outposts. Like, when you sell your junk to a town, that is kind of like a fuel or a currency that then the people running that outpost can use to, like, fund all the services, whether it's keeping the NPCs active or keeping a certain amount of guards active or whatnot. So it's kind of like you really need to encourage adventurers to use your zone, because if they're not playing in your zone, they're not dropping off junk at your outposts, and if they're not dropping off junk, then you don't have any, quote, fuel, to operate your services. So that's kind of a self-regulating way for someone. They're not going to just take an outpost over and then turn off all the services and say, ha-ha. Because if they did that, they're not going to be able to afford anything. They're not going to be able to afford any guards. Someone's going to come in and, like, take it over instantly. So anyway, that kind of explains kind of how that works. And then once they run the outpost, they can make decisions like, okay, these NPCs will be open for business 24/7. These NPCs will be open, 45 minutes out of every hour. That kind of thing. How frequently they're available. Obviously, if they're not very available, players are going to be like, this outpost sucks. I'm just going to take all my stuff back to Askegard. It's a little more of a hassle, but I'll sell it there because this outpost sucks. I'm not going to play here, level up here. I'm going to go to one of the other zones. So some people may choose to, there's a whole lot of options here. Some people might choose to be a benevolent outpost ruler and hang out there and say, hey, does anybody need any help? Does anyone need their weapons sharpened? Does anyone need this or that? Thanks for, coming to whatever zone. Or other people might want to kind of want to role play a jerk, and they might kind of rule with an iron hand or something like that. Who knows what people will do? But since they run the outpost, they get to decide a lot of those things. Now, if things go well, they can make some money, which normally would benefit more their clan, but they could also make some money for themselves, just literally just earning in-game coin if their town is very profitable. So that's kind of the motivation. There's the fun, the bragging rights, making some money. If it's your clan that took over the outpost, earning honor for your clan. So and then there'll be decoration options too. You'll be able to have some effect on the look of the outpost. Your clan standard will be displayed on the outpost, so it brings like fame and notoriety. So a bunch of stuff like that. Hopefully I answer. Again, I always give the long answer. It's kind of painful. I apologize for that. I can't. First of all, I was super excited for the game. We've been wanting to make this specific game for like 3 years at least. We've been wanting to make a game like it even longer than that, but this exact game for like 3 years. But the last few games we made to build up our team, to practice with Unity and everything like that. And now that we've got that down, we've got our team, the exact perfect right people, our expertise with Unity. So even though I loved making Tower of Elements, Dungeon of Elements, Rainmaker, they were really kind of like the training in some ways to make this game. So now that we're finally making it, I'm so pumped.
I'm just going to say real quick, because you caught me off guard, that the trash junk, the standard trash junk off the trash mobs, you are telling me that in your game it actually has a purpose beyond becoming some silver in my pocket.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a vital resource for those outposts. Like I said, it's like fuel. So we think that's going to be kind of fun. The fact that it's your junk trunk is kind of fun. And we actually may even have other uses. We may use it as we're gonna have some fun with the junk. It's definitely going to be a valuable resource as a way that people can kind of like vote with their junk.
I like the idea of having a junk trunk that it just automatically goes to, and I don't have to sort it in my inventory. That's amazing. Jada, did you have another question from his long? Did he answer all your questions, or did he create more questions?
He answered I absolutely enjoy hearing you ramble on, because while you did answer all of my questions, you answered questions that I was about to ask, in addition to making statements that I never would have known to ask, such as, is there any junk in your trunk? And
Exactly.
I absolutely adore the concept, and I'm looking forward to the concept of adventure taxing. That's just what I'm calling your system, with trading in your junk to outposts to fuel these various cities and towns and functions and that whole system. That's definitely going to be something unique to Stash, and that itself has sold me out wanting to jump in and find out when you are finally going to post this up on Kickstarter, because I've been looking for where I can give you money to support Stash, and I haven't seen it or found it anywhere.
Cool, that's what I like to hear. If everything goes as planned, tomorrow at approximately 1 p.m., so...
Yes, and there will be a description at the bottom of this video of the link when it's official. So there will be, you can go to this video once it is released, and there'll be a description down there. So anyone that's checking out now or checking out later, if it's not down there, just check back in a few days, and there should be something down there to tell you more.
Yeah, and also, you can always go to frogdice.com. As soon as it goes live, it's obviously going to be right on the front page of our website. So they can, if they forget where they heard about it or whatever, that's always a good backup.
Yes, and just so you know, this is one of the developers that I work closely with. Frog Dice Inc. has a link at the bottom of the stream, so you can just go right to the bottom of the stream and find the link right there. And now, Jada, did you have another question you wanted to ask, or you all straight on your end, or?
I am straight and excited. I do believe Torpid had a question or a statement he wanted to make.
Sweet. Torpid,
yeah,
you're up.
Mine usually goes back to PvP as always, but when you were talking about clan wars, and I think it pretty much was part of the statement there, but I'm assuming you're taking control of territory and resources and towns and functions and being able to tax, and these are all things that I really like. Now when you said that it doesn't have to have full loot to be a good game, and I personally know that, what happens when you do die? Is there any penalty? Because a lot of times, some games there is no penalty, and it seems like there's really no adrenaline pumping when you're actually in the PvP anymore. Does that make sense? Is that the right question?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I'll start by answering what the death penalty is in just regular. Like normally when you die, you will get some percentage of what we call XP debt. Like we're definitely not the first people to ever have that. So there's some amount of XP while you're, from that point forward, while you're earning XP, 50% will pay off debt and 50%, you're making progress until the XP debt is paid off, and then you're back to, normal. So it's kind of like a setback, but it's not that brutal, and you're still making progress. We didn't want to have no death penalty because in most MMOs nowadays, death is basically a teleport, and I think that, like you're saying, I think it reduces the drama. I always say, no matter if your game's lows aren't very low, then the highs won't be very high. So there definitely need to be times where something crappy happens, a bad death, and you're just like so pissed. And as frustrating as that is, it makes those times you live so much more exciting. So I definitely believe there has to be something. As we stand right now in PvP, we were not planning on a penalty, other than, like I said, if you bet, or if you're in a clan PvP battle, your clan's going to lose honor and the other clan's going to gain it, and that ranking has significant effects because the ranking for dominance unlocks abilities and things like that. However, that doesn't mean we're not open to, especially as a community develops of people that are really into PvP, it doesn't mean that we won't necessarily change that. I mean, the fact is, since PvP is totally consensual, it would be very possible to, if that's what people wanted, to change that. Because it's not like the people who hate PvP aren't protected. They could simply not PvP, or only duel, you know what I mean? So if the community of people in the game, of PvP people, are like, you know what, we really want this to be hardcore, man. Like when you kill somebody, they lose something and I gain something, whether it's money or whether it's